Hey there, what is happening YouTube? Thanks for stopping back into the channel today here with the Rustbelt mechanic. That's right, we got Project Cheap Freaking Caddy back into the shop today. We're going to be focusing on brakes, some hubs, tire pressure sensors, some of the drivetrain components that we have not gotten to yet. Of course, as usual, we're going to keep this thing as cheap as humanly possible, finding the cheapest parts, the cheapest ways, and rebuilding everything we possibly can in this one. So let's get into this one, get it up in the air. Let's look at the brakes. All right, so let's talk about the problems that we have going on right now. This thing pulsates like nobody's business. What does that mean? That means when you are on the brake pedal, the rotors have been so overheated and so warped that the rotors are actually causing the brakes to pulsate so bad. When you press the brake, it pulses up and down because of that warped rotor. Now, I was planning on doing a whole video on turning the rotors or having them turn somewhere, but actually we don't turn rotors at our dealership. We don't even have a machine to do it anymore because the rotors are so cheap to find right now. And on top of that, the rotors that you get anymore, if you turn them, they're more than likely going to warp again. So I actually was able to find rotors so cheap, I was able to get them for $11 a piece. That's right, $11, and that's taken shipped to me. Rock Auto has been pretty awesome. I ended up getting a coupon code for that, so that's helped out a bunch on this one. So I got all four rotors to go all the way around. I ended up upgrading the pads to ceramic pads, $14. Can't really beat that one. So I got 44 bucks in rotors. I've got 28 bucks in pads, so we're rocking it right there. And then we do have a tire pressure light on. The left front wheel on this one does not have a sensor in it. Somebody just put new tires on it, had a sensor, was broken or something, so they just put a regular valve stem. I ended up picking up one of those tire pressure sensors for right at 20 bucks. So 20 bucks for a tire pressure sensor in these times is actually pretty good. So I got that one, we're gonna put that one in, and we're also gonna do kind of a little rotation, and we're gonna balance these tires too because they shake pretty good. I think I might have a small leak in the left rear, so we'll have a look at that at the same time too. Also, the last thing that we're gonna get to today is gonna be the hub on the right rear. After we replace the transfer case chain, we're able to hear just about everything that's going on sound-wise, and we can hear that thing growling away in the right rear. So we'll get to doing that one after we get the wheel off and balance and get to doing the brakes back there. I don't think that one's gonna be really hard, but let's get these wheels off and look in at the brakes. All right, so we're getting in here and looking at our brake pads and rotors, and we can see that our rotors are severely overheated. There's blue streaking, and the rust that's all over them is a red tint. So that's usually a good indication that it has been quite overheated. Our brake pads, they are down quite low. Let's see if we can see inside of there. They are down to the scratchers on this side as well as the left front, so you can hear that as we're going down the road. Good thing is this steel here in the middle looks like pretty much brand new, so it looks like somebody's done a hub right here. That's pretty promising. I like to see that one. Well, let's get our pads and rotors off here, inspect everything, and then we'll get our new ones hanging on there, go through that. I hate it when that happens. The battery pops out of these M12s, stops working. All right, so it looks like it was new enough that we are just able to swap our rotor right off of there, not even needing to beat it off or anything like that. So we're not gonna have to do much grinding or anything on this hub when we go to put the new one on there. The slides and everything here are fairly free. We're gonna get some new grease and lube on those, but they work pretty nicely. We do have new hardware with our kit. Definitely a big must when you do these. Always use new hardware. We'll go through doing that one. Now, the first thing you always need to make sure you do with brand new rotors is you need to clean them off really good. With brake clean, wipe off everything that you can because they're stored with a bit of oil on them. You don't want that sticking on there because it'll ruin the braking period on the pads and just doesn't work out really well. So first thing, spray your rotors off, clean them off really good. All right, now these are the brakes that we ended up getting. They're from Rustbelt. They are a ceramic brake line and they do come with all of the hardware for them. The hardware is going to be a nice little additive to this one because we don't want to have any of this rust and corrosion carrying over from the old brakes. As you can tell, they were pretty rusty, crusty, and those pads were kind of seized into this hardware. So we want to get that old hardware off and get rid of them. Then what we're going to do is we're going to want to clean out all of the openings here where the hardware went. You can either use a wire brush or take it over to a wire wheel. I just like using a wire brush. And clean out all that corrosion where the nice new hardware is going to be sitting. There we go, nice and cleaned out. Then what I like to do is remove our slides from these right here, and then we're going to clean off as much of this old grease as we can. Get some of that cleaned off and cleaned out. Maybe take that boot off and clean out what we can in around that top where the grease was kind of caked and sitting. You know, it tends to hold any kind of other dust and debris and particles. Not really good for putting new stuff back together. And then we've got some of our brake lubricant, Silglide from AGS. That's what I like using for these caliper slides. Synthetic formula, whatever, mumbo jumbo, but we're going to put a decent amount of that on there. Reinstall our slide cap, and then we're going to put our slide back in. There we go, just like that. Then we repeat the same process for the other slide. Now we are ready to go ahead and install our hardware. We're going to put our hardware back into place. And now you can always tell how decent a brake pad kit is by how well the hardware fits the factory brackets. That one clipped right in. And the other side clipped right in. So we've got brand new hardware there. And then I also like to use some of this Silglide, and we're going to put that in where the actual brake pad is going to be riding as well, because we don't want that to seize up either. Get a decent amount kind of put in there. I like to do all this before we put it onto the vehicle, just because I don't want to have to try to get any of this stuff off of the rotor should I kind of, you know, miss the slide a little bit. So get all this put on here while it's off the vehicle. Then we can put our bracket back on, all lubricated, shined up, ready to go. You want to clean these old bolts off really good, wire wheel or something to get all of the old thread lock out of that. Usually I like to put a dab of thread lock back on these because this is pretty much the biggest thing you don't want these bolts coming back out from. Then you're going to install it on here, and we're going to torque these bolts down. I got to check on the torque on this one. I want to say it's usually about 45, 50 pounds, something like that, but make sure you check and torque these bolts correctly. At this point, we're ready to install our brake pads. We've already pre-lubed our slide areas where these are going to be going onto the caliper bracket. So all we have to do is kind of fit those into place. And since we cleaned off the inside portion of where this hardware goes, we're hoping that it slides in ever so nicely, just like that. Now at this point, lots of people have differing opinions on what you do for either anti-corrosion for the inside portion of your brake drum here, or on the pad material itself to keep vibrations down. Usually I like to keep the corrosion down, and we are here in Ohio, so anything to keep the rust away from this is going to work the best. So I like to use just like a small dab of anti-seize. I know that's kind of like the craft glitter getting absolutely everywhere. This stuff is kind of the devil, but I like to use a little bit on the inside portion of the drum hub right here, as well as maybe a little dab on the front and back side of our pads to keep them from sticking onto our actual caliper surfaces on the inside and outside. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of that, and then we're gonna slap back on our caliper. All right guys, at this point, everything is done on our brake caliper and brake rotors. Everything's installed, everything's lubed up, ready to go. Now at this point, we're gonna wanna take our tires over and we're gonna check the balance on that one. All the other rotors and caliper systems pretty much on the rest of the car are gonna mirror this one, the other side, as well as the rear on it. Nothing too special on here. Just make sure that none of that stuff is seized up by any means. Any kind of seized, any kind of corrosion is bad for brakes, so we wanna do everything we can to keep that from happening. All right, let's go grab our tire and let's get it on over to the balancer, get these balanced out. Now, unfortunately, at this point, this is one of the wheels that we were gonna change our tire pressure sensor on. So I started to break down the tire, and then of course, what do I find? There's all kinds of black sealer on the inside of the rim, and look at this. All this kinds of black sealer that somebody tried to fix a screw up instead of actually cleaning the rim off and doing it properly. So now I had to take the tire off, and we're gonna have to get all this ground off, put some new sealer on this, and remount the tire with new tire pressure sensor. Ugh. More work, but you know what? It's not gonna cost me anything extra. Of course, best tool for the job, Milwaukee right angle die grinder. This thing's a beast. Now, yes, these things do eat batteries a lot. I think I'll probably go through 2 of these for 4 wheels, but for the tool and what it does, it's freaking awesome. Now that we've gone ahead and ground down all of our beads, got all the corrosion and old bead sealer and everything off of that, we've got both sides of that ready to go, as well as the inside where the TPMS unit is going to be sitting. Also, make sure you get all the corrosion off the face of where it's going to sit against your rotor in there. You don't want to have to go banging these off later on down the road. After that, it's kind of up to you guys what you like to do on resealing the surface, but you definitely cannot leave it raw like this. Some people either like to paint it with some primer or use kind of bead sealer. Personally, what I like to use, we just have this extra seal bead sealer and sealing solution for ground down rims. This is what we like to use in the shop. That's what they tell us to use, so that's what I'm going to be using on that one. We'll see how it works down the road, I guess. So apply this to the bead all the way around. We're going to flip it over, put our new sensor in, and then we're going to reinstall our tire. And now we're going to get this thing up onto our balancer here, and we just so happen to have at the dealership a really nice and fancy road force balance machine by Hunter. So you're going to see what it takes to go ahead and do a full road force balance on these tires today. We're going to set our thing to road force, and we're going to go ahead and lower the hood. We have already set our tire pressures, and we're going to let it go ahead and balance. Now the first step here, it goes ahead and it does a balance. It also reads the inside run and layout of the tire and the wheel to see what kind of, I guess, abnormalities there is going to be to the wheel. So it shows the weights that are going to be required right there, and as it runs the roller over it, it measures the road force, which is how much pounds of force the tire puts on our roller that is out from 0. So this one had a road force of only 9 pounds, which is actually really darn good. So all we've got to do on this one is just throw some weights on it and we are good to go. All right, now we've got our wheel back on, and we're just gonna barely snug up our lug nuts because they need to get torqued properly. That's why I love my SP Tools mid torque impact. This thing is just perfect. Only weighs 4.5 pounds, and it's not something that I just need all that massive amount of torque and double the weight for on those big ones. So we've got those on, and then we're going to torque those down and rinse and repeat 3 more times around the car. I will grab you guys when we get to the hub. Now we've moved to our back brake assemblies. We've taken our rotors, taken the calipers and brackets and everything off. Now we're going to need to get our hub off, and I'm definitely thinking it is this one because literally every other one was a brand new hub. This is seeming to be the only original one still. So there's going to be 18mm bolts coming in from the back side. Hard thing is you do have to get to one of them that is behind the bolt that just so happens to hold this upper control arm on. So you're going to have to remove that nut, remove that upper control arm off to be able to access the bolt to remove that hub. Of course, they make it really nice and easy there for you. So we're going to get the nut off, get that off, and then we'll get our hub bolts off to remove the hub and get into that one. Also, something else that I wanted to point out and notice is that there's a couple of crusty spots starting to come through on this thing, and you can see where all of the road debris and everything sits. So what we're going to do is we're going to blow out all the road debris and everything, and I want this thing to last at least a little bit. The rust doesn't seem to have penetrated all the way through, but it is starting to build up quite a bit on the surface. So we're wanting to nip that in the butt right as soon as we can. And how do we do that? We are going to use our good old friend, fluid film. There's quite a few people who swear by this one, including Eric at South Main Auto. So I started actually using this one about 6 months ago on a couple of my things, and I'm going to do a review on this one as well. We picked up a couple of these extra cans from Fluid Film, so we're going to get some of this all cleared off, clean some of the rust off, and spray this so we're not going to have any more problems in the future. Another pro tip for these axles: once you get the axle nut off, if this axle will not go into the hub, if you don't have the special tool to be able to do that, another cool thing to do is to take a couple of hammers, and they need to have a ball peen, kind of a rounded end to it, and you're going to put that right into the divot of the axle, and then you're going to take a second hammer and you're going to give it some good whacks. There we go. Now our axle's driven in there and our threads aren't messed up. All right, now that we have all of our bolts out behind it, we have to get out good old trusty hub shocker. We're going to be getting this one on here and beating off this good old hub right here. You got to be shitting me. This one doesn't fit. No! All right, plan number 2 is going to be this axle kind of remover. This is the tool that you would use to push your axle in. But another thing you can use it for is once you get your axle pressed in all the way, you can bang on this a little bit. Try not to ruin it too much, but you got to do what you got to do with stubborn hubs. They're on there a little more. Here we go, guys. All right. And yes, that bearing is very, very junk. That thing is dry and rust filled. It just came totally apart. Huh. All right, well, let's get our new hub and get this thing back together. We got all of our upper mounts and everything all cleared out of all the road debris and all the junk and crap. So now we got our fluid film, and again, I like to get those areas so we don't have any rusting issues in the future. We're gonna hit some of the subframe mounts and some of the bolts and stuff down here. Oh no, we're running out. Boy, isn't that just my luck tonight. Oh well, gotta go get another can. All right, fresh can, ready to go. All right, now let's get our hub back up in here. Also, I did put a little bit of the fluid film stuff on the inside on the actual spline. You could also put anti-seize on there if you desire, but it's always a good thing to put some of those on the sleeve because you don't want that thing having issues down the road either. All right, let's get our bolts in. Alrighty guys, we got all of our wheels on. We're gonna let her down here, torque everything down, check everything out. We're gonna pump our brakes up, check the brake fluid level, of course. I think eventually we might do a brake flush on this one because, you know, it does have 200,000 miles and kind of doubt very many people have ever really done it to this thing. So, you know, we might do that here in the future. But we got to get in after this one and relearn our tire pressure sensors still, clear out all our codes, and then we'll be able to test drive. All right, so now what I didn't know when I was waiting on was the fact that I really couldn't program the tire pressure sensors. I have a Tech 2 for this vehicle to be able to get in and pretty much do everything, but come to find out that you can't even put this into learn mode for the tire pressure sensors, even with a Tech 2. You have to have a key fob. So what did I have to get? A key fob. So now that I finally have one, which we'll have to add to our list too, we're gonna get our Cadillac's tire pressure sensors all programmed up. We'll show you how. All right, so there's two ways to go about programming the tire pressure sensors on these. You definitely have to have the key fob to put it into programming mode, but then at that point you can either A, have a tire pressure tool like the one I kind of have here, an activation tool. You don't have to have this fancy one, but I know there's some cheaper ones that you can get for using this, but this is the one I'll be using. Or you can go around and deflate the tires at a certain amount and the car will recognize that. So to put it into learn mode, we have our key on and we're going to hold our lock and unlock buttons on the fob. And that puts us into learn mode. Then we have to go around to all of our tire pressure sensors and actuate the trigger for all of them. And it's going to honk at each one of the tires. You go left front, right rear, left rear until it's all done. Once you get the left rear done, it will honk twice, and that's when your programming is done. Now our last one, honk twice, and that means our tire pressure programming is done. All right, guys, we got that part of the project all done and finished. Our brakes are done, our hub is done, everything is back in, our tire pressure sensors, tires are all sealed up, and our sensors are all programmed. Ran into a couple of things that we didn't really know we'd need, the tire pressure sensor, and we ended up needing the key fob to be able to program them. That kind of sucked. So let's go through where we are at right now, tally-wise, on our cost for the Cadillac. Also, I wanted to say I forgot on the last episode to add the radiator onto that list. I did not add that on there, so we're gonna tack that on right now. The radiator was 69 bucks, rotors $11 a piece. Whopping big score there. So 44 bucks in radiators, pads were 13 bucks a piece for 26 bucks. Hub was $40, Tpms sensor 22 bucks, and the key fob ended up being $38 because I didn't really feel like buying one of the cheap little crappy ones off of eBay because I just have no luck here and they only work like 20% of the time. I did not want to have that hassle. So 38 bucks on that one for a whopping grand total of $1,278 is where we are at for the total build, the cost of the vehicle, all the parts, everything in it, done, good to go. I think we are doing a freaking fantastic job on that one for the cheap freaking Caddy build, showing you guys that it does not cost an arm and a leg to either own or rebuild one of these Cadillacs for your guys' personal use. Well, guys, that's about all we've got for today. If you have any questions or want me to cover anything else in this build series, make sure you leave it down in the comments below. If you guys have any other questions regarding any of the parts or anything, hopefully I'll be able to answer those as well. We've got lots more coming up on the channel in the way of tools, more for the Can-Am, as well as some exhaust work that we're going to be doing on the Duramax here in the next week. So make sure you stay tuned to that one. Subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell notification so you get notified when I come out with cool, awesome content just like this one here today. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and as always, you guys stay awesome.